All right, now we can focus on the structure of the federal courts. We're not going to worry about state courts too much. We want to make sure we understand what kind of things end up being dealt with by state courts, but we really want to make sure that we have a good understanding of what the federal court system is like. So beyond just the Supreme Court, we want to look at all the different courts that are a part of the United States federal system. All right, so in the federal court system in the United States, we have 3 levels that you need to know for sure. So 3 levels. At the top of the court system is the Supreme Court. That's what the Constitution says. The Supreme Court is the highest law or the highest court in the land. They are the highest court of appeal. They are the highest point of review of law. So the Supreme Court's at the top. All of the rest of it is left up to Congress. So Congress designs the rest of the court system. And what we've had for a long, long time now is we've had 2 additional levels. So the middle level of court is what we call circuit courts of appeal. So here we have 12 circuits across the country. And these 12 circuits hear the appeals of all of the district courts. So the circuit courts are going to have appellate jurisdiction first. All right, so all the district courts we'll get to in a sec. All the district courts will have a bunch of cases, and the appeals will go to specific circuits. We'll look at that map in a second and explain that. Down at the bottom level, this is the main courts in the United States. These are the district courts. The United States is divided up into 94 districts. These 94 districts all have original jurisdiction. So since there might be, so many court cases taking place across the country, it just depends on like where the issue came up. So the district courts would be that low level of court with original jurisdiction divided up all across the country into 94 districts. Okay, so this map shows us the different circuits. So this shows us where the 12 circuit courts are in the United States. So each little different color of states here, this represents what we call a circuit, which means this is a group of district courts. So all of the district courts in an area would feed into one circuit court, and that's where they would hear the appeals of what happened in the district courts. So these circuit courts, you see 11 on the map. There are 12 because the 12th one is in Washington, D.C. These 12 circuits, they're all like presided over by a Supreme Court judge, and the Supreme Court justice just monitors what's happening in these circuits, what kind of issues are coming up, and thinks about which cases might go to the Supreme Court. We'll end up talking about that tomorrow. But here, what happens is these 12 courts, represented by the dark circles here with a number in it, these courts hear most of the appeals in the United States of America. So if you have appealed your case, you're going to circuit court. You can see us there. Our district would be Western Tennessee, and that is a part of the 6th Circuit, which is in Cincinnati, Ohio. So you might have your case heard here in Memphis first, and if you have a reason to appeal your case, you'd go to Cincinnati, Ohio, and argue before a different set of judges about how you were treated unfairly. All right, at the district level, what you see there, this is the federal building downtown Memphis. This is the corner of Poplar and Main. The federal building has all kinds of different U.S. government offices, but it also has U.S. federal courts in it. So if you are going to federal court for any reason in West Tennessee, your court case is heard here in the federal building. These are the main trial courts in the United States. So like any kind of issue is going to start here at this low level of court. They're going to have original jurisdiction, meaning the facts of the case, where they're dealing with that in both criminal cases and in civil cases. So as the country is divided up, there's 94 districts, and each state has at least one district. Districts don't go across state lines. So like if your state has almost no people at all, like a Wyoming, you got one district. If your state's pretty big, like Tennessee, it's divided up. So we have a West Tennessee, a Middle Tennessee, and an East Tennessee district. There's also district courts in like U.S. territories. So like there's a court system there that's not really states. So things like, Puerto Rico and all of our other territories. And then in those places, they only have original jurisdiction. So in these district courts, there's only original jurisdiction. They are not thinking about whether or not things are fair or not. They're deciding the facts of the case. So in a criminal case, like, is this person guilty of a crime? All right, now let's talk about that middle level of courts, the circuit courts of appeal. Here, this is a picture of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So you see it's the United States Court of Appeals building. This is in good old New Orleans. This is that's where the court is for the Fifth Circuit. We'll look at the map again in a minute. But like if your case was in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, you're going to have your appeal heard here in New Orleans. So those circuit courts of appeal, there are 12 of these across the country, and the 94 districts across the country are organized into these 12 different circuits. So these courts only have appellate jurisdiction, and they only handle their group of district courts. So they cannot hear anything else. They cannot hear things for the first time, and they are only reviewing the decisions of their district courts. Here, they don't have like trials. So there's not like arguments being made. There's not juries and things like that. But what they do is they are just like looking at briefs that come from the lower level of the court. So briefs will include like the arguments that the lawyers on either side want to make. They may include amicus curiae briefs, but this is just judges that are like reading the briefs and deciding the issues without having like an actual courtroom proceeding. So very rarely there can be oral arguments, but that's usually most cases are just going to be decided based on the briefs. So remember we talked about briefs. This is just like a summary of important information. The judges review all this information and they can make the decision without having to like actually have the courtroom argument. Okay, so the appeals, when they are listening to a case be appealed or they are reading the briefs, then that is almost always 3 judges. So it's like a mini Supreme Court. Like you have 3 judges there that are going to vote and make their decision in the case. So almost always you've got a panel of 3 judges. They're randomly selected because each circuit is going to have judges appointed by Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. So you get them randomly selected here to hear your case. So you can't pick which judges you want to argue in front of. If you have made an appeal from the district court level, then you always get to go to the circuit court if you have a reason to appeal. So the circuit courts are pretty busy. The Supreme Court, we'll talk about later, does not have to hear your appeal, but the circuit courts do. So most cases, they're all decided at the district court level, but most cases with an issue are going to stop here at the circuit court level. DC, we mentioned they have their own circuit, so that's the 12th circuit, and they're gonna be a very, very busy court because they have to deal with like all of the issues with federal agencies and stuff like that. So they're super busy, and the circuits, if the circuits are like dealing with the same issue at the same time, that's the kind of thing that's going to end up before the Supreme Court. Earlier in the year, we looked at how same-sex marriage was spreading across the United States legally, and you had different circuits. The number 6 circuit here that represents Tennessee and Ohio and those states, they decided that they were listening to a case about same-sex marriage, and they said, you do not have a right to same-sex marriage. At the same time, the circuit court, the Ninth Circuit out in California, they were hearing this like an almost identical case, and they were ruling you have to be allowed to have same-sex marriage. So if we have 2 circuits that are dealing with the same issue at the same time, and they don't end up deciding the same way, that makes it highly likely that case will end up at the Supreme Court. All right, here's that map one more time. So this shows us our different circuits, and this is just how the courts are divided up. You'll see that that it's not necessarily population-based because like that Ninth Circuit is huge. It includes our largest state, California. It has some very small states, but California, Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, all those West Coast states. And then you've got some other circuits that are kind of small, like the First Circuit, the Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island district. So they're not necessarily of equal size, but they are all of equal importance. They're the middle level of our court system, and they're hearing appeals, so that means they have appellate jurisdiction. And in some cases, appeals can go further from this level up to the Supreme Court. All right, that's it for today. This is it's time to take a look at our bigly ideas and wrap up all the important stuff going on here. So here's President Trump showing off how strong the bottom of his shoe is as he approaches a dangerous ramp. All right, the main things we want to remember today: you are really going to have to be able to compare state and federal jurisdiction. You're not going to have to say much about state jurisdiction, but just understand that most things get left up to the states. If it's a basic crime, that's a state problem. If it's like a divorce or something, that's a state problem. So the federal courts, the federal jurisdiction is going to deal with more complicated issues, might involve multiple states or something that's mentioned in the Constitution. You'll also need to make sure that you can compare original and appellate jurisdiction. This is super important. So knowing that in original jurisdiction, we deal with the facts of the case, right? What happened here? Who was wronged or who committed a crime, something like that. The appellate jurisdiction is going to deal with the constitutional issues and the fairness, right? Was this person treated fairly? It's going to be important that you know the role of the district courts. And with that, like the district courts have original jurisdiction. They're hearing like the main, like all of the federal issues in the United States. And then those circuit courts, that middle level that does the first appellate review of anything coming from a district court. So those circuit courts of appeal, those are going to be hearing all the appeals. They have appellate jurisdiction, meaning that they're only dealing with the fairness of the case, like how were the people treated. All right, that's it for the structure of our federal court system. We have not said hardly anything about the Supreme Court yet because we're going to focus on the Supreme Court for the next few days. We'll be focusing almost entirely on the Supreme Court and how it operates and the issues and the politics involved there. But first, we had to make sure we had a good understanding of these lower levels of court and what they do.